Good afternoon, everyone. So, today we will be presenting cognitive dissonance theory, a key concept in psychology that helps us understand human behavior and decision making. So, what is this theory? This theory refer to the psychological discomfort that we feel when we have conflicting beliefs, attitudes, or behavior. This discomfort pushes us to reduce the conflict and restore consistency in our thinking. This theory is important because it explains why people change their attitude, justify their actions, or make certain decisions, even when those decisions may seem irrational. The concept of cognitive dissonance was first introduced by Leon Festinger in 1957. He suggested that people naturally want their beliefs and behaviors to be consistent. When there is a mismatch, it creates psychological tension, which we call dissonance. To reduce this discomfort, individuals may change their behavior, adjust their beliefs, or justify their actions. And later on, a psychologist named Elliot Aronson, he expanded this theory by focusing on self-concept. He explained that dissonance is strongest when our behavior conflicts with how we see ourselves. So, moving on to the key concept of cognitive dissonance, there are several important concepts in this theory. First, cognitive dissonance, which is the discomfort caused by conflicting thoughts or actions. Second, cognitive consistency, which is our natural desire to keep our beliefs and behavior aligned. Third, the dissonance reduction, which refers to how we try to reduce that discomfort, either by changing our thinking or our actions. And lastly, fourth, compliance, which happens when people act against their beliefs due to external pressures, often leading to a change in attitude over time. So, a cognitive dissonance happens in everyday life. For example, a person who knows that smoking is harmful but continues to smoke may convince themselves that the risks are not that serious. Another example is when someone buys an expensive product, even if they are unsure about it, they may just justify themselves that the purchase is worth the money. Students also experience this. For example, they may believe that studying is important, still they procrastinate. And to reduce this discomfort, they might just say that they work better under pressure. And these examples show how people try to reduce psychological discomfort by changing their attitude or justifying their behavior. And overall, this theory explains how people deal with conflicting beliefs and behavior.
So, I would like to start with case study that probably very relatable to everyone in this room. Imagine a student, let's say someone at MUIC, who has a very strong self-image as responsible, hardworking person who care deeply about their GPA. That self-belief is cognition A. Now, 2 days before a major final project deadline, that same student spent 5 hours watching YouTube and gaming. That behavior is behavior B, and it directly contradicts cognition A. The result, immediate psychological discomfort, guilt. But here, what's interesting, instead of just stopping and going back to work, the students start rationalizing. They tell themselves things like, I'm watching this video for research inspiration, or I need this break to recharge, I will be more productive afterward. Our second case study moved from academic life to health and fitness. At the start of the year, someone invests in a 3-month gym membership. The decision comes from a genuine core value, a belief in the importance of physical health. That is a cognition A. But after the first month, they start skipping workout, socializing, sleeping in. That behavior B. And with the financial investment already made, the guilt hits differently. This is what researchers call effort justification. The greater the investment, the stronger the dissonance when you don't follow through. So how does this person cope? Two strategies emerge. First, trivialization. They minimize the importance of the behavior altogether. They focus on external obstacles like the cost of transport, or tell themselves that at my age, strict exercise isn't really that urgent. Second, social comparison. They compare themselves to friends who don't exercise at all. Suddenly, skipping one workout doesn't feel so bad when you're doing more than 10. Notice what's happening in both strategies. The person is adjusting their thinking rather than their behavior. The gym membership quietly expired, but psychologically, they found a way to feel okay about it. That is the power and the trap of dissonance reduction.
Since Bas has already introduced the scenario, I will now explain how cognitive dissonance theory helps us understand it. Basically, the theory explains what happens when there is a conflict between what people believe and what they actually do. This conflict creates a psychological discomfort, and people are motivated to reduce it. Let me show you two simple examples. First, we have assignment procrastination. Student may believe, oh, I am a responsible student, I am a hardworking student, but at the same time, they delay their work and spend time on entertainment like video games or scrolling on TikTok. So here we have the student believe himself as a responsible student, but their behavior shown as procrastination. And this mismatch creates a cognitive dissonance. Instead of immediately changing their behavior, the student often changes the way they're thinking. For example, they might say, oh, this is just a research for inspiration, or I need rest to be more productive later. And this is called rationalization, and it helps reduce guilt and protect their self-image. A research by Firas and Pilkill show that procrastination is often used to manage emotion rather than simply being lazy. The second example is skipping the gym. Person believes that staying healthy is important, so they buy a gym membership, but later they stop going. Again, there is conflict. The person believes that health is important. She knows that fact, but he's still not exercising. This created dissonance, especially because they already invested money. According to effort justification, people feel more discomfort when they invest resources but do not follow through. To reduce this discomfort, they may minimize the importance of exercise. It is not that important right now, or blame external factors. Oh, it's inconvenient, I'm not free today. Or they might just compare themselves to others. And this comparison is explained by social comparison theory. So again, instead of changing behavior, they adjust their thinking. And now, to support this idea, we can look at a classic experiment by Leon Festinger and James Carl Smith. In this study, participants were asked to do a very boring task. After that, they were told to convince another person that the test was actually funny. So the control variables are some participants, they receive only $1 and others may receive $20. And interestingly, participants who were paid only $1 later reported that the test was more enjoyable. And the question is why? Because $1 is not enough justification for lying. They experience more psychological discomfort, so they reduce this discomfort by changing their attitude, convincing themselves that the test was actually interesting. This experiment shows the same pattern as the earlier example. When there is a conflict between belief and behavior, people often do not change their behavior, but instead change how they think. So cognitive dissonance helps explain why people in the scenario continue unhealthy or inconsistent behavior even they know better.
Now, I will discuss some criticism of cognitive dissonance theory. First, one major issue is that it is difficult to measure scientifically. Cognitive dissonance refers to an internal psychological feeling, so it is subjective and cannot be directly observed. Because of this, researchers often rely on their self-reports or indirect behavior, which makes the theory harder to test reliably. Another limitation is that it may oversimplify human motivation. The theory assumes that people always try to reduce inconsistency, but in reality, people sometimes just ignore it. For example, people may continue unhealthy behaviors like smoking even though they know the risk. So for the next slide, another important limitation is that cognitive dissonance does not fully consider individual and cultural differences. For example, in collectivist cultures, people may prioritize social harmony over personal beliefs, so they may not feel the same level of dissonance. Also, many studies were conducted in laboratory settings using students. So this raises questions about whether the theory applies to real-life situations, which are usually more complex and influenced by many factors. On to the next slide. So, in some situations, cognitive dissonance cannot fully explain motivation. First, like many behaviors are based on habits. For example, people may check social media or eat unhealthy food automatically without thinking about inconsistency. Second, behavior can be influenced by social pressure. People may follow group norms or authority figures even if they personally disagree. In these cases, motivation is influenced more by habits or social factors than by cognitive conflict. And so, moving on to the next slide, the alternative theories. To better understand motivation, we can look at these author theories. First, Maslow hierarchy of needs explains motivation based on different levels of human needs, such as safety, belonging, and self-actualization. Self-determination theories focuses on intrinsic motivation and suggests that people are driven by autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Finally, conditioning theory explains behavior through rewards and punishments. So these theories show that motivation is not only about reducing discomfort. So on to our last slide, the conclusion. In conclusion, cognitive dissonance is useful for understanding how people deal with conflicting beliefs and behaviors. However, it has several limitations, including difficulty in measurement, oversimplification, and limited real-world application. So to fully understand human motivation, we need to combine this theory with other perspectives as well, and it will help us better explain behavior in real life situation. Yep. Thank you. So that's the end of our presentation.